The herald peered back at Kwame. His eyes were somehow menacing, though none were visible in the dark recesses of his blood-spattered, bone-colored mask. The shiny material of the mask reflected in the yellow moonlight on its edge. The red-splattered butterfly-shaped markings around the eye holes seemed to move, writhing more violently the longer Kwame looked at them. Dirge let out a menacing giggle, reacting to the confusion and fear apparent on Kwame's face. The herald leaned forward on the weathered headstone, his shadow casting long in the yellow moonlight. Kane and Pennell watched from the heavens, helpless. No stars gleamed in the black sky, as if the cage of Frazier herself had never seeded the cosmos. Even Zolan, the sorcerer, was hidden in the clouds and the blackness. There are some who believe your task is pure folly, with only sorrow to thank when your work is done. If you can find your courage, end it here, end it now. Dirge stood tall on the headstone. Then with a slight hop, he was standing on the grass again, approaching Kwame. Step by step, Dirge stalked towards Kwame, and with each silent footfall, Kwame felt his courage trying to leave him. The sight of the herald caused his skin to tingle. The encroaching fear somehow felt exciting and encouraged him forward. You should have never come here, Knight of Kincaid, Dirge roared as his filthy fingers splayed wide, hooking into the edge of the darkness and wielding it like a knife. Kwame gasped at the appearance of the shadow dagger from seemingly nothing. He wanted to run, and what other choice did he have? He was out of his depth here in the darkness. Then Kwame found a deep resolve. The darkness is his ally. No more. Kwame drew his blade and canted the words of activation. Fe es tal. He raised his sword high above his head, and it began to glow brightly with white light. The aura of luminescence expanded beyond the blade and illuminated the crumbling headstones, the grass, and the herald himself. Dirge stopped in his approach and recoiled from the light, staggering backward between the two gravestones nearest Kwame. Bravely, Kwame walked forward with his blade extended. The light brightly illuminated the herald, showing every wrinkle and stain in his ancient motley. The writhing gloom marks on his mask even seemed to retreat in intensity while the herald was lit up brightly. Kwame was 2 steps from Dirge, watching him collapse against a tall stone. Bringing his sword back for a downward thrust, the light retracted from Dirge just long enough for the fiend to grab a cast shadow from Kwame's arm and pull a whole shadow warrior into being. The shadow warrior rose to its feet and mimicked Kwame's silhouette, taking his shape and movements as it squared off against him with a shadow sword every bit as equal of Kwame's blade of light. The shadow struck first, a blow to the hip that Kwame barely deflected, followed by a backhand to Kwame's face that sent him sprawling backwards onto the grass and wildflowers. Dirge laughed from behind the shadow, his mirthful outburst running a chill up Kwame's spine, making him shiver. To say you are your greatest enemy would be a statement of the obvious, wouldn't you agree? Dirge brandished the shadow dagger as he watched Kwame fight his own doppelganger. Kwame quickly rose to his feet while deflecting heavy blows from the shadow sword over and again. The shadow swung at his side, his sword banging hard into Kwame's gold-inlaid amaranth breastplate. It knocked the air out of him. Staggering, Kwame backed up into a headstone at knee height, then went backwards over the stone, losing his footing as a sword slipped out of his hand and clattered away. Dirge's laughter got louder and more hideous. He was clearly enjoying the show. Stupid! Kwame berated himself under his breath as he once again tried to scramble to his feet in the west grass of the Barrow Island. As he got up to one knee, he was visited by a new horror. From the grass and dirt covering the grave he lay upon, a long dead hand sprung upwards from under the ground. It was mostly bone with old and leathery connective tissue, covered in dirt and roots and clay from the grave. Kwame screamed and started backing away as his arms windmilled for balance. Another decomposed hand exploded through the dirt, followed by the same at another nearby grave. Clods of dirt exploded in the air as a half a dozen nearby graves showed signs of unnatural life. The dead were returning just like the Dusklanders believed they would. Here. Now. Dirge turned his head left and then right to look around, seemingly confused. The shadow warrior closed on Kwame again, swinging widely down in an arc, barely missing as he jumped to the left. Kwame saw his sword a few feet away on the ground and knew that without it he had no chance of defeating his shadow simulacrum. He jumped left further to avoid another wicked cut from the shadow blade and was about to make a move for his sword when a man's deep voice boomed through the air as if by some mighty amplification. "Run, Kwame! Don't think! Just run!" Kwame heard the voice and measured the value of the warning for a mere half a second. In agreement, he set his feet and ran as fast as he could in the direction he was facing. He stumbled and weaved between headphones and put as much space between himself and Dirge, the shadow, and whoever this new arrival to the scene was, as possible. His boots were damp and slippery in the grass and barely kept him upright. Kwame used the nearby stones to save himself from fully wiping out several times. He heard noises behind him, including several ghastly screams. Kwame didn't even turn his head. He left the Herald and his undead and shadow minions well behind him. After running for several minutes between the stones, Kwame finally exited the Plateau of Bliss and found the northern shoreline. There, anchored out in the water, was the Sun Sister. Her sails were still drawn up tight. She never left. Oh, thank Frazier. Kwame ran fast as he could for the dilapidated dock in his rowboat, untied and jumped in it, and started rowing furiously towards the ship. As he approached, minutes later, a lantern appeared over the railings of the deck. Glowing in the light was the smiling, weathered face of Dell, watching Kwame approach. Dell set the lantern on the rail and lowered the rope ladder. She called down to Kwame playfully. "Hello, sailor." Kwame rolled his eyes as he climbed up the rope ladder and laughed. He looked at Dell as he lifted a leg over the railing and stood upright on the deck. "You are a most welcome sight, Dell. Why didn't you leave? It has been well over a day." "Well," Dell began slowly, "is it so terrible that he had complete faith in you? And so did I. Ahmed was charting our course, and we saw some sort of light bulb on the hill. I figured it wouldn't be long and you'd come running. Did you get what you were looking for?" Kwame slid warily down the railing until his legs splayed out on the deck. He had failed, and now the Reaver would undoubtedly find more child victims. He felt exhausted and ineffective, weighed down by his armor now scarred from the fight with his shadow counterpart. No, the tome was in a vault and was guarded by a demon or something. Some creature in a mask and motley that could control shadow and the dead. Any hope I had at leaving with the book ended when he appeared. He seemed to know everything about me, like he could look into my very soul. Dell heard the words and gazed back at him with worried eyes. This creature, the progenitor of the gloom, the Dusklander curse, he's known to us. Dell briefly outlined the Herald of Sorrow's notoriety, as the accomplishments of the demon tempter are long and storied. She left out a few details, and suddenly Kwame had a better idea of what native people of Dusklands had been up against for so long. He can only be seen by non-Dusklanders if he wants to be seen. That tells me you were on the right path. We can get you some backup and try again, but in the meantime, let's get you out of that armor before you fall off the ship and sink like a damn stone. Kwame let Dell assist in removing his armor, and when she pulled the clamshell of his breastplate off, she gasped with a look of horror and pulled her hand back. The breastplate, fouled with a dark gash, clattered to the deck of the ship. Between Kwame's long ribs and the short, a great cut had been made of shadow that was dug into his mail shirt, padding beneath, and deep into his dark skin and flesh. It writhed and festered unnaturally in Kwame's side. He looked down at it in horror. Mother of Light. Kwame began his prayer before his eyes rolled up in his head, and he collapsed, landing in Dell's strong arms. She lowered him gently to the deck before screaming into the night for help.